Hi, everybody. Good morning. Today, we're going to be continuing our discussion of that awesome poem we read yesterday called Echoes. We're going to be completing an opening do now activity. We'll be completing an interesting before reading activity where we reflect on two of the characters that we read about, both Magdalena and the narrator. For today's purpose, today we are going to read our poem Echoes again. Let's pay close attention to words and phrases that highlight the outer and the inner aspects of the characters in the poem. So we're going to be taking a closer look at the character traits of the two main characters that we witness in the poem. We'll be revisiting our academic vocabulary words, the words activist and the words bystander. So once again, students could return to their word concept knowledge building organizer and add information from yesterday's reading to the organizer. For the word activist, students may say someone who stands up for others, someone who acts and doesn't just talk. They may add to a bystander, somebody who doesn't care about others, somebody who waits for others to act first. So from reading yesterday's poem, students are going to have a better understanding of what it means to be an activist and what it means to be a bystander. And they may also have more comments and can certainly make connections to times in their lives where they've been conflicted between taking action and possibly not getting involved in a bad situation. Now, there's a link to the same text that was read yesterday, but there's the guiding questions have changed. So there's new guiding questions for students to respond to, and they direct students to pay attention to different aspects of the poem than what was focused on yesterday. Following the reading, there's two discussion questions for students to respond to, and once again, these discussion questions can be accessed on this student handout document for the week, which is available in the video adapted resources folder for teachers to access and modify for their students. After the reading, there's what's called a text rendering activity. This is a very interesting activity that brings up a lot of interesting discussion. And students are going to choose words, phrases, and sentences from the poem that they thought was most important to understanding the author's message and tone of the poem, and other students will respond to the comments of their classmates and peers and build on those responses. So students may say, that word or phrase stood out to me as well, but in particularly, I was drawn to this word or phrase. And they could explain their reasons why for choosing those words or phrases. Following the after reading activity, there's a select number of closing and connecting activities. There's a check for understanding to ensure that students understand why the narrator was so angry at the end of the poem. There's a connecting to the text question where students can speak about a time where they did not get involved in a situation. And you could ask how they felt about that. I think a lot of interesting topics and stories will arise from a question like this. Students could also complete a role-playing activity where they pretend to be the narrator and they send out an email to the other guests following the events of the party. Finally, the ending of the poem can be rewritten as if the narrator did take action, took the action that they regret not taking, and how would that portion of the poem be rewritten? This is the end of the poem, the final stanza, starting at line 26. How would the narrator rewrite this last stanza of the poem had they taken action? So at this time, we could jump into today's lesson. Can somebody please read today's essential question for us? Good. How do we stand up for ourselves and for others? Can somebody please read today's two lesson objectives? Good. To summarize key ideas and details in a text, and to express ideas clearly with peers, building on the ideas of others. As we discussed during our text rendering activity, students are going to be building on the ideas of others. Now let's take a look at this opening do now image. Look at the image. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Now students can use these sentence starters to assist them. In the image, I see, I think that, one thing I wonder is. Now teachers can pause the video here and give students a chance to respond to this image. Please also encourage students to consider the emotional impact that this image brings up and the emotions that students may feel when looking at an image like this and the emotions they would associate with what they are seeing in this image. Teachers can pause the video here and give students a moment to respond. Students may say, in the image, I see dark clouds and lightning. I think that it is a picture of a dangerous hurricane or storm. One thing I wonder is, why are storms so loud and scary? Now, this is a characterization activity. It includes an opportunity for students to draw the character, which is certainly helpful, especially for visual learners, to try to put down on paper the images that are in their mind. And it could also bring up some interesting discussion questions about certain characteristics that the students notice or the ways they picture certain characters. So that may be done on paper, or depending on students' digital literacy skills, could be done on the computer as well. Additionally, students may look back and look for words that they would use to describe these characters, both Magdalena and the narrator. Again, today's purpose. Today we are going to read our poem, Echoes again. Let's pay close attention to words and phrases that highlight the outer and inner aspects of the characters in the poem. Students should pay attention to both the physical characteristics as well as the emotions and the inner characteristics of the characters. Now, once again, there's our 2 academic vocabulary words, and students could return to their word knowledge building matrix chart. Now, here is links to the text. There's an audio recording of the text here, and here's a link to the PDF of the poem. It may be worthy of consideration for possibly students to take turns reading the poem out loud, or to read it differently from how it was read in the previous lesson. Now, during the reading, there's a number of guiding reading questions for students to answer and respond to encourage them to perform a close reading of the text and to pay particular attention to certain words and phrases. Following the reading, there's 2 discussion questions for students to answer. And again, these could be done individually and then shared out loud, or completed with a partner, or completed as a whole class and during a whole class discussion. So again, these discussion questions could be found on the weekly student handout. Following the reading, students are going to be performing their text rendering activity, where they, on their own, review the text and then select one word or one phrase that they felt was the most important to understanding the author's message or tone of the poem. Students would then have a chance to respond to share out and respond to their peers. This could be done in partners, or this could be done in small groups, or this could be done as a whole class. Secondly, students are going to choose a sentence that they think indicates how either the narrator, Magdalena, or the guests are feeling, a sentence that indicates emotions. And similarly, students can have a chance to respond to their peers. It may be interesting to see if many students respond to and select similar words, phrases, or sentences. Finally, students will respond to one of the comments of their classmates and explain why, in their own words, why they think that was a good choice that one of their classmates had made. Finally, there's a few closing and connecting activities. There's an opportunity to check for students' understanding for them to possibly practice speaking and conveying ideas to say why the narrator was frustrated or angry at the end of the poem. Students could once again connect to the text and discuss a time where they did not take action when maybe they should have. It's something that many people could certainly relate to. Finally, students can perform a role-playing activity and pretending they were the narrator, and write to the other guests of the party, discussing how they acted. And finally, a creative writing activity where students could rewrite a stanza of the poem and change the ending as if the narrator served as an activist rather than a bystander. So at this time, you could jump into the before reading activity and create your own images and descriptions of the two main characters, Magdalena and the narrator. So again, I hope you will enjoy today's lesson, and I hope you very much enjoyed this important poem, Echoes. Have a great day and enjoy today's lesson.